What's up, you guys? Welcome back to another episode of KO Your Brand, the podcast for fame-ready entrepreneurs. I'm your host, Katrina Owens, top personal brand and public relations expert. And holy shit, having a moment because for the first time, I think we're like 10 episodes in, or maybe like 11. Maybe this is number 11. I spent the least amount of time messing with the technology. Like, usually I have to go through a whole freaking thing at first when I'm like setting this up and making sure that like we're like, okay, the camera's in the right spot and like the mic's working and then like the lighting. And I think I've finally got this down to like a bit of a science. Yes, I did still do like a little bit of fooling around, but like not as much as before. The only like anomaly or caveat to this is my freaking internet connection. Oh, it's been a journey. Canadian internet providers, they're all bad. I don't want to name drop the one that I have, but just know that the one that I have is actually one that we recently changed to because the one I had before that was worse. Um, ugh. But anyways, we're here. We're here and we're doing this. And I'm so excited to be back with you all today because I'm going to share a topic that is near and dear to my heart because it's my own experience, but it's also one that a lot of people are interested in learning the strategy behind. So if you follow me on Instagram, hi. If you don't, what are you doing? How are you listening to this podcast and not following me? So go to Katrina Owens PR on Instagram and hit follow. And then while you're at it, go to KO Your Brand on Instagram and hit follow over there as well if you're not already. So a couple weeks ago, I shared on Instagram a post that basically said, I haven't celebrated enough the fact that 3 months ago, 4 months ago, I was still running a traditional agency model marketing business. And last summer, July 2024, was when I hit my most successful revenue month yet. And that number, because it's important, was $20,000 in revenue. So I hit that last July. Yay. Then after that, it was a rapid downhill spiral because of a lot of things that I'll get into this episode. But I'm recently celebrating that this past March 2025, I hit $20,000 revenue again, but with an entirely different set of services. And if you're watching this on YouTube, you can see Dexter starting to have a little bit of a temper tantrum. Okay, Dex, be chill, please. So, anyways, I'm celebrating the fact that in just 3 months, I flipped my business from a struggling agency model marketing business to the business that you guys all see in here today, which is me as your personal branding and PR expert, host of KO Your Brand. And I've essentially replaced my highest revenue agency month with my highest revenue coaching month. And oh, so much magic has occurred between now and then. But we're celebrating that because this is the business I've always wanted. If you listen to the very first episode, that's overcoming perfectionism and entrepreneurship, where I get into a little bit of my journey, you'll know that um, I always wanted to have this personal branding and PR coaching business. That's where my gifts are. It's what I think I'm really good at. And most of all, most importantly, it's what I'm passionate about. But I didn't think it was possible for me. I let a lot of self-doubt and limiting beliefs kind of hinder that. So being able to replace my highest revenue agency month with now my highest revenue coaching month is such a substantial milestone. And I haven't really like let that one really sink in. So now talking about it and making a podcast episode about it is really helping me actually internalize that work. And what I'm going to do today is actually tell you how I did it, because after I posted that, a lot of women in my group coaching program were interested in making that swap themselves, as well as a lot of one-on-one clients or people that are interested in becoming one-on-one clients booked discovery calls after I shared that one very simple yet impactful Instagram story. So that's what I want to get into today. All right, so let's get into it. And the reason why I want to share this today is simply to show you all what's possible for yourself. One of the kind of common thoughts or phrases that I hear a lot is if you feel envy or jealousy or like any of those kind of uncomfortable feelings when someone else you admire is going after their dreams and really proving what's possible, those feelings are just meant to stir up your emotions and get your attention because that signals to you that that's something that you want for yourself too. And I used to be someone who admired all of the online coaches. I wanted that like easy breezy, white space kind of life. And I just didn't think it was possible. So I'm doing this episode to literally show you what's possible and also explain the how, because there really isn't enough transparency around the how, which isn't as simple and as easy breezy as you would think. So let's get into it. Okay, so first, the backstory. So let's kind of, if you haven't listened to the very first podcast episode, full length podcast episode I ever did. It's called Overcoming Perfectionism. And it dives into the story behind this podcast and gives you a little bit of the insight into what my business looked like for so long. So if you haven't listened to that yet, highly recommend going back and listening to that after this. But I'll just give you a little bit of a recap, just so you know what's pertinent to this conversation. So when I started my business and up until November, December 2024, I was running a very traditional marketing agency. We did branding and web design, we did social media management, public relations management, mostly done for you services. And then I was doing my coaching programs, my PR coaching, personal branding development, all of that stuff, which is both DIY and done with you. Was offering those on the side because those were really what I loved doing. But I had been living under the impression that it wasn't possible to build a high revenue, profitable business off of those services. And those were my own limiting beliefs combined with some people that I let give me very bad advice for a while. But it was my mentors in the living in balance space that really helped me realize that those programs are my gift. My gift is taking personal branding and PR and making it super accessible, but also super strategic, showing people what's possible for themselves, and also teaching. And teaching gets a really bad rep, right? I actually remember a conversation I had with one of my mentors probably a year ago when I was first starting to sell and develop these programs. I actually said to her, there's this common belief out there that those who can't do teach. And I really let that be an excuse for me for a while where I was like, oh, but who would invest in learning how to do this kind of thing themselves when there's more money to be made and it seems more lucrative to just hire people to do things for you. But at the end of the day, my belief is the old PR model doesn't work. As we've dived into, as you've heard me talk about in different episodes, the traditional public relations model that agencies and publicists still try to sell you, it does not deliver the results that most business owners need for their business. And if you want to build a personal brand on top of that, you got to know how to do it yourself because ain't nobody going to be able to know what your unique perspective is, your unique position, what makes you different. No one's going to be able to tell you those things except for me. But the only reason that I can help clients pull those things out of themselves is because I have a framework that I work from. And if a client comes to me and has literally no idea what they want to be doing or what they want to focus on, that's actually not my ideal client. But clients, oh my God, Dexter. But clients come to me when they have a vision and a purpose living on their heart. And they're like, I want to build a personal brand around this. I just need the messaging and the clarity and the strategy to bring it to life. So you can't expect to come into working with me totally blind and let me work my magic that way. My magic comes from taking your vision and your purpose and really putting a strategy behind it. So that's that's the that's the backstory. Those programs are now the core of my business. I phased out my agency in November/December of last year, and that was kind of for two reasons. The first one was they just weren't doing that well. So I had a great contingent. Oh my God, Dexter. I had a great contingent of clients that had been with me for a very long time, but because my business had gone through so many shifts and changes, the way that I wanted to work with the clients was no longer a fit for some of the clients that were with me. And what I mean by that was I had really made this shift to personal branding after growing my own personal brand, helping other personal brands grow. So some of the clients that weren't personal brand based but had come on board at the very very start of my business were great clients, but there were things I wanted them to do, like show up on camera a little bit more or integrate their own PR efforts and outreach efforts into their strategies. And they just didn't have the capacity or the desire to do some of those things, which really, at the end of the day, like dampened my desire to help them. That's pretty much the long and the short of it. I was basically at odds with my own philosophy because I really believed so deeply that, okay, this is the process that I know works. A lot of the social media channels that I was helping to manage on the agency side of my business were stagnant. And that's because the founders just weren't showing up like the way I wanted them to. And by doing their social media management and PR management for them, I was actually going against a lot of the core beliefs that I now held around what worked. So, in other words, I was being a fucking hypocrite, and no one likes a hypocrite, especially me. So, that was kind of the first thing I was up against. I had all of these clients that, while they were lovely people, the work was taking up. And I'm just giggling because if you're watching this on YouTube, you are seeing Dexter fully trying to nuzzle into the blankets. I'm going to pause for a sec to let Dexter figure this out because y'all on YouTube do not need to be seeing his butthole like live and in person right now. Are you comfy? This is why you got to watch the video, guys. You don't just get me and all this juice. You get Dexter trying to live his best life too. Okay, I think he's cozy now, so we can continue. So, in my agency model, I had these clients that were also supported by Heather. Shout out Heather. She edits this podcast. But for a long time, Heather was my social media assistant. That's how she started working with me. So she would support me on doing a lot of the caption copywriting, creating graphics, creating reels, scheduling posts. So it was a collaborative effort, but I really needed Heather to be doing the bulk of that work so I could actually shift gears and focus on building out the personal branding and PR coaching programs. And I thought for a long time that that was going to be enough. I thought that I could build a self-managing agency while also building these coaching programs. And unfortunately for me, I realized after a while that that was just not true for me. And that's because whether or not Heather was doing so much of this work, it still limited the time and capacity and energy that I had to work on my own business because I was still the front facing client support for my done for you clients. I still had to review all of that work. I still supported on strategy. I was still doing all of the client communications and middlemaning. And some of you might say, well, Katrina, it sounds like you should have hired a project manager. And sure, that was obviously a possibility, but I fucking hated owning an agency. That is the point that we often miss. If you don't enjoy doing the work, you don't have to. Just because it brings in some revenue for you, you do not have to keep it. I never saw myself as an agency owner. I never wanted to like own this agency with all of these different team members and people that were supporting. And so, this is all to say, my agency clients were taking up a lot of space in my brain. And I knew that if I wanted to really give my business the best shot at growing into what I wanted it to be, I had to let go of the services and clients that were no longer serving me. So, some of my clients self selected to do this. And I'm grateful that a lot of them made that choice to bring their expertise in house. Some of my clients I had to gently break up with, which, that happens too. But gratefully, all of them took it really, really well. And I always took that as a sign that, okay, this is what I'm meant to be doing. If my clients are supporting me in doing this, then obviously I'm on the right track here. This is a little nudge from the universe that like, Katrina, you got this, babe. Like we don't have to stress about the direction, even though it was like a very stressful time because revenue was low. And revenue was actually so low that I really felt quite scared a lot of the time. And it's really interesting because I'm seeing this pattern in a lot of the women that are currently inside my group coaching program, 5 Weeks Till Famous. So a lot of them are wanting to narrow their focus, but they're feeling this fear of their safety in offering more. And I now know that that is simply not true. That is a false sense of security. We think by having all of these services to filter people into, it gives us a better shot at making money. But the problem is when we do that, we're actually not building a well-known brand at all because it's very hard to become well-known for being an expert at many things when you're growing a business. Maybe one day, maybe one day you can start to go broad and position yourself as someone who is an expert in brand design, but also social media management. Maybe, or maybe that brand is actually talking about how they play together. There's something there. That feels like an interesting case study for another podcast episode. But what I'm really trying to say here is for me, the number one thing that had to shift was my focus. Because honestly, up until November of last year, I was super unfocused. I was trying to market and sell my coaching programs and grow them, but I was also really still trying to sell people into my agency services. But the problem was I had conflicting messaging. Here I was trying to sell done with you and do it yourself PR programs and personal branding programs, whereas I'd still be jumping on a call with someone who wanted PR management. And I kind of had to flip between, okay, in this case, done for you public relations management is fine, while in this other case, it's not. And I actually don't believe that's true. I believe do it yourself PR is actually the most effective, regardless of who you are or what your business looks like. So I was going against some of my own core values to make a sale. And the most ironic thing about all of that is I didn't make a single freaking sale doing it that way. And I think that was the universe showing me that these are not your ideal clients. Your ideal clients are the person that you think they are, but you keep telling yourself you have to go after these other clients that maybe seem bigger, seem like they have bigger budgets, but they're so out of line with what your core purpose and values really are. So that was a really important realization for me to make. And it's so interesting that I'm seeing a lot of my clients go through this right now. So Yes, I'm recording this podcast for the general public, all of the listeners of KO Your Brand. I know there's a lot of marketers and agency owners out there specifically that might benefit from this conversation. I'm also going to share this episode with all of my 5 Weeks Till Famous participants because I also think that this is a very important conversation that gives more context to some of the things that I'm teaching them inside the program right now. So if you're a client inside of the program and you feel like you're being spoken directly to right now, you are. And as a little bit of a plug, this is the kind of elevated experience that you can get if you work with me. Okay. I'm not just going to coach you inside my programs. I'm also going to create the extra content that helps you get to where you want to go. Okay. So now that we've talked about the focus, it's really important to talk about the support that I continue to invest in. So this is something that I've started talking about on social media right now, whereas when you want to be a personal brand, a profitable personal brand, I should say, you need to take on the role of the talent and the CEO. So what do I mean by that? Okay. So when you are the talent, that means that you are the front facing part of your business. So I actually love the word the talent. It kind of came back to me recently because I was talking about a role that I hold within a certain event where my role is literally just to be the talent, and it's kind of fun. Okay, not kind of, it's really fun. It's all I've ever wanted. um, and actually, it brought me back to 10 years ago. I had a little guest spot on a Sportsnet commercial. For all you Canadians out there, Sportsnet, you know it, you love it. For all of my like American and international friends out there, it's kind of like the ESPN or one of the ESPNs in Canada. So this is about 10 years ago, 9 years ago, maybe, when our baseball team, and I say our because Canada only has one professional baseball team in the MLB, Toronto Blue Jays. The Blue Jays made it to the World Series. I think that's what it's called. I'm not a big baseball girl, which is going to sound crazy based on what else I'm about to say here. So, anyways, Toronto Blue Jays had made it to the World Series, and Sportsnet was filming this commercial across Canada that was basically like a hype commercial. The Blue Jays are Canada's baseball team, you know, that kind of thing. So I got asked to be in it because they were filming some things in Vancouver. And at the time, I was like 21-year-old Katrina, like kind of casually dating. And I had met this one guy who I I was like, "Hey, it'd be fun if you were in this commercial with me." So the context of the commercial, and if I can dig it up, I'll post it on the KO Your Brand Instagram. So when this episode comes out, go take a look and see if I managed to dig it up or not. Um, so essentially in the commercial, we're like on a date and we're at the Vancouver Aquarium, and the beluga whale actually like comes up right between us, and we're having this like laughing moment, and I'm wearing this like Toronto Blue Jays t-shirt. So it's like one of the clips in this commercial. But anyways, it was a really fun day or really fun experience to have. And before and after that experience, this guy I had been on the day with kept referring to me as the talent. And I loved it. I mean, obviously, like that's a core memory for me because I'm remembering it now 10 years later. So it's a concept that I still like to apply today to personal brands. So, what I mean by you need to become the talent is you need to show up on your social media, but you also need to show up offline. You need to do all of the external activities that really help position you as the personal brand that you want to be. It's also investing in your content and having professional content, you guys. One of the people that coached me, Brittany Hahn from Rich Girl Cult, in one of our previous sessions, she was talking about perceived value. This is so important for personal brands. You need to understand what your perceived value is to your audience. If you're not showing up consistently and you're not showing like high quality photos and videos of you speaking authoritatively. Maybe that's at an event. Maybe that's creating an event so you can capture that content. If you don't have any of that, your perceived value is much, much less. When I think about my personal brand and its perceived value, I had been told in recent months that someone or some people in my community had referred to my brand as bougie. And I had never really like considered myself bougie per se. Like I drive a Honda. I actually don't own a designer handbag yet. Um, the car and the bag are the two things that I'm really going to treat myself to when I hit certain milestones in my business. Yeah, I like nice things, but the reason why I believe I kind of got that bougie brand perception was just because I'm always investing in my content. When I go on a trip, I'm investing in content that shows that I'm on that vacation. I'm making time for it. I'm investing in it. I invest in my appearance. No, I don't have like designer clothes. I mean, right now I'm wearing For All, which is an amazing women's golf brand that is a higher end brand, but this isn't this was like a splurge for me, to be honest, guys. This was me treating myself. Um, I'm just not like a flashy bougie kind of girl. I mean, look, we're recording this in the spare bedroom in my townhouse in Vancouver. Okay. So taking it back to perceived value does not mean you have to be flashy or like spend money on nice things, but it means that you need to look put together and you also need to be visually showing your audience that you're an expert. So that's what I mean when I say you need to become the talent. You need to be the talent, but you also need to be the CEO. And this is the interesting part because most people, when they grow a personal brand, they want to be the talent and they don't want to be the CEO. But you have to be both. And I can immediately tell which one people aren't doing by just looking at your content and spending like 15 minutes with you on a call. So your CEO means you also need to become a master at the back end. So, yeah, system structures, things that help you scale for sure. But I also mean you need to understand your strategy. This goes back to what I was saying earlier in the episode, guys. You need to understand what are the key things that make you different. What is your unique position? Who are your competitors? Who is your ideal client? That's the strategy. And you need to have that as a personal brand. And that's what I help my one on one clients do in my personal brand discovery program. There are ways for you to do it yourself too. And I'm actually going to be offering a couple different programs inside the Fame Ready Entrepreneur program, some like micro classes and trainings on that. So that's probably the right spot for you if this is a place that you're struggling with and you don't necessarily have the budget to work with me one on one, which starts at $5,000. So as the CEO, you need to know what your personal brand strategy is. This is essentially creating the business plan for your personal brand. Because if you want to have a profitable personal brand, you need to continue to invest in it like you would any other business. It's so funny because I think that as like consultants or coaches or online service providers specifically, there's so much that we don't need to invest in. We don't need to buy inventory. We don't need to have like a brick and mortar. But that also does a bit of a mind fuck because then we're like, oh, well, then I shouldn't need to be spending any money on the actual like structure of my business at all. And that's also wrong. The most successful businesses continue to invest in themselves, and it just looks different regardless of who you are or what type of business you own. You have to decide what those investments look like. But to think that you can just run your coaching, consulting, service provider business and never invest in, some of these larger investments that other larger businesses have to, that's a wrong assumption. So sorry, that's just my 2 cents there. So that's what I mean by saying the CEO. You need to be able to hold the vision, but you also need to delegate. And this is where I see so many business owners get it wrong. Most of my time during the weeks, you guys, is spent working on my business now. creating content for this podcast, but also my social media, doing collaborative calls, meeting new people, going to events, preparing for events, creating the structures and being able to scale my programs, preparing for speaking gigs. That is what I spend the majority of my time doing now. I spend likely around 8 hours a week maximum doing one-on-one client calls, group coaching calls, client strategy for my one-on-one clients. And that is the biggest reason why I was able to make this shift. If you want to be able to totally flip your agency model into your coaching business, you need to also have that reflected in your time blocking. So if you don't time block, I highly recommend you do. It's a game changer for all entrepreneurs. I highly recommend it. But what I mean by that is if you were to block out your entire week and color code it so you can visually see how much time am I spending on client work, how much time am I spending working on my own business, how much time am I spending on self-care, which is also important when you're building a personal brand, you can visually see how much time you're spending in each area. And if you're spending more time on client work and less time on working on your own business, that is the biggest hindrance to you right now. And you need to get better at delegating. Heather probably doesn't even know this, but she's editing this podcast, so she's going to figure it out real quickly. There was a 4-month period in my business when I was flipping this model, flipping this revenue, and I did not pay myself, but I paid Heather. And I'm so grateful for the fact that I had personal savings that I could live off in the meantime. And I also had the ability to, work a line of credit in my business and have some support that way. But I knew that I was not in a position to give up the help that I was receiving from my team member. And that is where most business owners get it wrong. As soon as they see a dip in revenue, because I wanted to do this too, you start to pull back. I mean, I was pulling back on different things. Gratefully, I knew I had such a special team member in Heather. So I was like, we cannot lose her. We got to keep her and we're going to figure out the rest. But if it wasn't for Heather, I would not have been able to make the switch. So you need to build the team that supports you. Don't just build the team. Before Heather, I had a virtual assistant at one point. I had someone else that I called a brand and publicity assistant, but they weren't the right people. They didn't have the right qualities, the right skill set. I didn't hire properly. I was hiring based out of desperation. And then when I went to hire Heather, it was out of strategy. I knew exactly the type of person I was looking for, so that when Heather came through my inbox and we did our first Zoom, I was like, this is my person. So Heather, as you edit this, there's a little backstory for you. So those are the things, right? The focus, investing in support, and delegation, those are the things that you need to do if you really want to be the CEO in your business. And by being the CEO, that's when you open up more time to be the talent, because now you're architecting your life and your business and you're going to decide what you spend the most time on. But you have to invest, you guys. You have to invest in your content. You have to invest in support. You have to invest in strategy. If you don't make these investments, you're never going to have forward momentum. And yes, those investments are going to feel a bit risky. But if I've learned anything in growing my business, it's that if you want to be a successful business owner, you must be okay with taking a risk, and you got to build your nervous system to support that risk. I heard this line yesterday. So I was driving home from the driving range, and I was listening to the official playlist of KO Your Brand, Cool Girl Shit on Spotify. And there's a song on it called Knockout by Bon Jovi. Obviously, it's on the playlist. And there's a line at the beginning of the song that says, if you're scared to lose it all, you're never going to win. And I was like, whew, okay, Bon Jovi, heard that. And it's true. The final thing that I had to do in the past couple months of really trusting that I could make this flip successfully was managing my mindset. And for so long, I was so scared of losing it all. I was so scared of losing all my money. I was so scared of losing what I had created. And that's why I wasn't winning, because I was holding on so tightly to all of these things instead of just building up my nervous system and telling myself that it was safe to hold all of these things. And that's the work that I do inside the Living in Balance mentorship space. I have done so much inner work and will continue to do so, by the way, because a lot of people think once your inner is like dialed in, that's where it stops. No, it's constant evolution. You're constantly fine tuning your inner to match your outer world. And that's really what I had to do. And right now, I feel like my inner and outer, perfect match. But that was after a long period of time of feeling like there was a disconnect, and the two were constantly trying to catch up to each other and match. And it was only by regulating my nervous system and telling myself that I am the woman that is a highly profitable personal brand and PR coach, and managing my mindset around that every single day. That is the only reason why I was able to not freak the fuck out when I was making the lowest revenue I had ever made as a self-employed person for like months on end. There were 4 months when month after month I was like, wow, I didn't know it was going to get this bad. And that's the thing. I was so scared of losing it all that I was losing it all. So that's the flip that you have to make. It's your mindset. It's knowing that if you want to be the personal brand, the sparkly, dreamy, famous personal brand that you dream of being, you got to know how to make and hold risk. And I actually think that that's one of my like core purposes here on earth and doing this work, is to show you that this is the risk that I'm willing to take, and this is how much it impacts me and benefits me, and that it's safe for you to do that too if you take everything that I say to you into account. You can't just half-ass this. You can't just take one piece out of all of this and implement it. You have to do it all. That's the strategy, you guys. That's the framework. It's right here. This is the strategy. It's choose one service offering, focus. The camera zoomed in on that one. I guess that was the most important one. If you're watching this on YouTube, woo, we just went straight on the focus. The focus is so important. But the focus is not going to get dialed in without external support. So for me, it was building my funnels and my programs to really now support that core service offering, because how I was offering those core services, my personal branding, one-on-one programs, my publicity coaching group programs, they weren't scalable before. And that's a lot of the work that I do inside the Rich Girl Cult right now, is learning how to build a scalable offer suite. So when I get on a stage in front of 150 or 200 people, I have the capacity to convert all of those people without burning myself out or feeling overwhelmed. How many of you can say that you could actually do that right now with the services you offer? If you got 100 new leads tomorrow because your personal brand blew up, could you handle 100 new leads in one day? I know my audience, and I know most of you would say no. And that's a problem. That's not what a profitable personal brand is. So you've got to invest in the scalability and the funnels and building that out. And I used to think that that was like for a different version of me. And actually, I guess that just means I'm the version of me now that needs that. So that's an interesting one to kind of mull on. Okay. And you've got to delegate. There's no way I would have had time to build all those funnels and really perfect my content and go to events and record this podcast if I wasn't delegating the things that aren't in my zone of genius. Heather creates amazing content for this podcast. She creates amazing edits of each episode. And that's her doing things that are in her gifts, which allows me to stay in mine. And then finally, it's the mindset. Your mindset is going to be the thing that takes you out, my friends. So if you don't work on that, you are really, speaking from experience, that's where it ends. When the mindset and the negative thoughts start taking over, that is when you get taken out. And so I highly recommend staying above that. So that's the strategy. So let's talk about the results for a second, because I've now told you the 4 core strategic moves that I really made when it came to flipping my model from agency owner to profitable personal brand. And I love to talk about ROI. I mean, you guys love to hear it. When I did my event episode, that was one of my like most highest downloaded episodes, because I told you in the promotions and the show notes and the title that I was going to tell you the ROI. So now I want to tell you what the ROI of this flip has been, because it's been fairly new. It's the end of April right now, almost the end of April. So I would consider myself running a solely coaching business since January. So almost 4 months now. And I mean, I already spoiled one of them. So March was a $20,000 revenue month. And when I look at April, it's going to be the same. And I kind of wrote out what I attribute all of that ROI to. So because I was able to create funnels and programs with the support of the Rich Girl Cult community, that enabled me to actually reconvert previous group coaching clients into the newest version of my group coaching container, which has changed. I had been trying to get people to re-enroll in 5 Weeks Till Famous since I started that program last summer. And I never experienced getting re-enrollments until I switched up the offer to make it more lucrative for the business owners that had previously worked with me but wanted to build but weren't quite ready for a one-on-one price point. I wouldn't have been able to build out that funnel if it wasn't for going to the Rich Girl Cult conference in Orlando. And I've run the numbers. The amount that I invested in traveling to that conference, about $3,000 to $4,000, I have 3x'd my ROI already. It's been about, I guess, like just over a month since I've been back. And the ROI from just attending that event has been 3 times the amount that I invested to go. But that's what I mean about investing. That's what I mean about being the CEO. I decided I was going to the Rich Girl Conference back in the fall when my revenue was at its lowest. But I met Brittany on Threads and I was like, I got to go to this thing. And I'm so glad that I did, because it really transformed my brand and business. And I talk a lot about growing an international personal brand and getting out of your local community. And I'm so glad that I did. That was an event where it really paid off. And I mean, some of you that are listening to this already know what's in the works for the next level of that evolution of my time with the Rich Girl Cult, but some of you don't yet. So I'm going to save that announcement because that's a big juicy one that's still coming. And now, most of all, my name really is associated with visibility, authority, and modern public relations tactics. One of my group coaching clients actually started following me back in the fall when my personal brand was not hitting, because I was trying to sell my agency services and I wasn't doing a good job of marketing my group coaching or any of my coaching programs. I actually stopped talking about them altogether online. And one of my previous group coaching clients had actually started following me during that time. And she actually noticed the shift. She noticed how I hadn't been talking about why doing your own PR is important, why personal branding requires public relations to grow. And she actually noticed the flip. She noticed when I went from struggling to sell my agency services online to now being the go-to expert in that field. And she was in my January cohort of 5 Weeks Till Famous. But she said to me, something about your content changed and it's really hitting hard now. And it's so good. And I attribute that 100% to the focus. Okay. So this is for all of you that are still like, that's great advice, Katrina, but I think I'm going to just focus on selling like my 5 services. No, if you want to experience the results that I'm sharing with you today, it's pick the focus, narrow it down, get really specific. Because that was a client that literally said to me, whatever shift you made, it's working. Okay. So I attribute all of the brand awareness and authority I've been able to cultivate over the last couple months to really getting so freaking dialed in on what my focus is. And all of this, I mean, we love the financial results. We love to see women win. At least I do. But I also have to tell you how this all makes me feel. So for a very long time, I would actually say I don't feel like myself. In the fall, I was depressed. Let's just call it what it was. I was in a state of depression, and I was depressed, and it was hindering me from working on my business. And I don't know if the depression was a cause of my business not doing well, or if my depression actually caused the business not to do well. I have to imagine they both kind of worked hand in hand in that way. But now I feel so good. I feel like I'm walking the path that I am meant to. I am centered. I am grounded. If I start to spiral about money or feel stressed or anxiety, I have the tools and the time to be able to ground myself back into this calm state, which allows me to make decisions from a place of grounding, maturity, non urgency. And that is a really beautiful place to be. So, as we wrap up today's episode, I hope that gives you a little bit more details into how I flipped my business from a traditional marketing agency model to a highly profitable personal brand and coaching business in just 3 months. And I share this because if I did it, you can too. And what I like to leave you with is this, because I'm not special, I'm strategic. And if you are struggling with the strategy part of growing your focused Blue Ocean personal brand, if you listened to last week's Blue Ocean personal brand episode, you'll know exactly what that means. You are the perfect candidate for my one-on-one program. My personal brand discovery program is the container where I will help you develop the strategy that allows you to increase your visibility. This is not a low ticket offer. It costs $5,000 for 3 months of a done for you strategy. I create the strategy for you, and then you implement it with my support. So it is a done with you program. It is not a low ticket offer, but it is for the agency owner, the service provider, the person out there that wants to start being the talent and the CEO. So if you're listening to this and you're like, yeah, Katrina, the focus, the support, the delegation, the mindset, those are the things that I need to work on to be able to do the thing and have the business I really want to have, head to the show notes and book a discovery call with me. They're 15 minutes. And I'll be able to tell you whether or not I believe that this program can help you. I only work with people that I know I can help. So if that feels like the little nudge that might help you take the leap into finally investing in the support that you need for your personal brand, I cannot wait to chat with you. And if you're like, okay, that sounds good, Katrina, I'm not quite ready yet, well, keep listening, keep digesting the content and the tidbits that I serve up for you week over week on personal branding and public relations. And I will see you next week. Toodles.